The great Dante Scarnecchia joins us this morning on the Harbor One Hotline. Good morning, Dante. How are you?
Good morning, Chris. I'm doing good.
So I thought you would be the absolute perfect person to talk to today because Trent Brown once said, I think it was the attention to detail with Dante, the love he had for the game and the love he has for the guys in his room. I think the things he's willing to do for the guys in this room is what separated Dante Scarnecchia from other coaches. That was Trent Brown. What about your approach was able to unlock the best out of Trent Brown with the Patriots, Dante?
Oh, it was. I think that the biggest thing for him was getting him to conform to the culture in the room and the standards that the players in the room had set for themselves over a long period of time. And once he realized that he was either fall in line or fall on his sword, it was going to be either one of the two, and I think he found the alternative of falling in line with everyone else. And I think that the guys in the room had a lot to do with it too, from a standpoint of when he wasn't all in. And you could tell, there were days he would come out to practice and say, oh man, he's not all in today. And you got two choices as a coach. You let them know about it, and you say, you ain't practicing this way today. I can tell you right now. And then the players take over and say, hey, look, this is how it is, and this is what you got to do. And I think once he realized that, and there were times, honestly, where periodically you had to remind him. But once he did, he was fine, and I think that's what it's all about with them. All this that's happened here the last, week with him not being around and coming in and not doing much. I don't know what all that's about, honestly, because I don't talk to anybody over there. I haven't talked to Trent, but one time in passing at the stadium. But, I like the kid. I think he's a tremendous talent, and I would love to see him, be there and all in and be able to do the things that he can do to help the team, because if he's the player that he can be, then you don't have to worry so much about that side of the line of scrimmage, specifically against pass rushers, and you can devote maybe whatever attention that needs to be devoted to the other side if they need it. So, that's where they are with him. Like they got to get him on board, or do something with him to get him to play the way that they need him to play.
Well, Dante, how do you get a guy on board? I understand when you talked about the room before and you have guys in that room like Marcus Cannon, that maybe a guy can look up to. But when you now become the leader in that room, or, the longer tenured player in that room, and there's nobody for you to or there's nobody there to kind of reel you in and help you out, how do you get a guy to get on board when they don't have that guy to look up to, or that guy to maybe put their foot on the back of their neck?
Well, I think you're selling David Andrews short on this part of the deal, and I think that's the same thing can be said for Michael Wenyu. Those guys, David's been there a long time, and David's one of the preeminent. He was there when Trent came in, and he's a culture guy. He understands what the culture is. David does, and I think that Michael Wenyu's been there for now going into his fourth year, and, there's a lot of respect for that guy in that room. So I think that there's plenty of leaders in there, and Adrian Clem's a leader, and he's their coach. And so I think that, the more time that, they can spend with one another, Trent and Adrian, and get the thing to, have a meeting of the minds relative to what's expected of him. The guy will do what you want him to do and what he's asked to do. And, you got to get him. You got to get him on board, and that's what's important at this point.
Dante, switching gears, DeAndre Hopkins watch is all the rage right now here. And so we were talking about it earlier, and these guys better than we do. When it comes to Robert Kraft and Bill Belichick during a decision as big as trying to get him, if he's working out, if he's coming to visit Gillette, who controls the purse strings at the end of the day? If Robert Kraft wants to make this team really good and make them really good today, can he go to Bill and say, hey, do whatever it takes to sign this guy?
He's the boss. Courtney. I mean, how if he whatever mandate he lays down, that's the law, you know. I mean, and I think that he and Bill have a good working relationship. Look, they both want the best thing, and that's to have the best team. And Bill has driven every day of his life to get the team to put together the best product out there on the field. And if that involves getting this guy in here, to make a contribution as a wide receiver, a veteran wide receiver, and if that's the best thing for the team, then they will arrive at a mutual agreement to do that. But, they've always been, a group that conforms to the mandates of the salary cap. And if you're bringing this guy in and paying him so much money, that means you got to cut out of others, then, that's something that has to be taken into consideration. And those are things that are way outside of my pay grade. But I do know this, that if they feel like they have a huge need and this guy can make a difference, and it's from a salary cap standpoint, it all fits, then I think you'll see the guy on the team. But if it doesn't, then I don't know where they go from there.
Dante, you know better than anybody about winning culture and having been a part of this organization from its infancy with Bill Belichick to where it developed over the last 20 years. Is that culture, what's the first step in that culture that you saw that obviously you had at the beginning with Brady and with Damian Woody and with Matt Light and those guys, and then you had it back with David Andrews, back with Trent Brown back in 2018. How does that really, what's the first ingredient you need, and is that something that's already established now, or is that something that gets developed over the course of a season or even a career?
Chris, I think that you have guys in the locker room right now, and you have people that are vocal that you hear about a lot of, you hear a lot from. Matthew Judon, okay, as an example. I mean, how can you not respect Matthew Judon and the kind of player that he is? And there's plenty of others like that in the locker room who are certainly willing to say the things that culturally are the things that we have come to expect. So, there's a lot of guys in that locker room that are the same way. That I think that the one thing that always was apparent was the leaders in the locker room are not afraid to speak up and cross territorial boundaries relative to. Linebackers don't always. The leaders at their linebackers are going to say something to a defensive back or a running back or an offensive line. Hey, look, that's not the way we do things around here. So I think that transcends all positional groups, and the leaders are the leaders. And I think they still have plenty of those guys in there. You see them and you hear them, and these are really good players and respected players. So you count on those guys to hold up their end of it relative to the locker room part of the culture. And still, it all comes from the head coach down through the chain of command of the players through the coaching staff. So I think it's there, and they've got plenty of guys that are outspoken and good leaders, and guys that you can count on to do that stuff.
Dante, I think it's great that we're able to talk about culture here, and I agree with you. Matthew Judon seems like one of those guys in that locker room. Obviously, I always bring up Willie Mack when I played. But when you look at Bill and kind of evolving as a coach and, culture in the locker room, sometimes I feel like the newer player, and it's because of social media and there's a lot more money that's guaranteed to these guys, and so that plays a role into it. And you hear some of the things out there that could potentially be culture breakdowns that Bill is dealing with. How does Bill try to evolve, or how would you evolve as a coach in this game today with just all the things that a lot of these players have at their fingertips when it comes to the social media, and as much money as some of them are guaranteed, to try to continue to have that culture, especially when, the winning's not the same, where a lot of times that is what was able to sustain that culture?
To your point about the winnings hasn't been the same. Clearly, over the last 3 years, the expectations have not been met. and there has been a degree of problems relative to not having meeting the standards that are set around there. I don't know how much of that has to do with any of the stuff, the social media or any of that stuff, honestly. But I do know this, is that look at the identifiable goal is we want to win, and then you have to. Then as a coach, you have to say, okay, these are the steps that we have to do in order to win. And we have to play as a team. We have to be disciplined as a team. We can't, the same old thing that Bill has said for 1,000 years. In order to win, you got to avoid doing the things that cause you to lose. That is a code there, and you can't be a team that has a million penalties and mistakes and fumbles and interceptions. You can't make those mistakes or you can't win. So that'll never change, and that'll always be part of it. So I'm one of the guys, and maybe it's just I'm so old and so set in my ways that I'm not going to acquiesce to, these players are different. I think there's guys out there that play like Jermaine Wiggins and is going to get everything he possibly can out of his body and what limited athletic ability he has. But I'm just saying is, and I was just watching you play last night in the Snow Bowl game, Wiggy, and it's look at guys just come through, and they fall in line, and maybe they're not all in culturally wise from a cultural standpoint, but they're willing to give everything they got out there, and I don't think that ever changes. I just don't. I think that. If they start this thing out the way they all want to start it out, and play together and be the kind of team that they can be, then we'll see where it takes them through this year. And then if the results are like we all want it to be, then we won't have a lot of these discussions other than, boy, those guys are culturally on the same page. So we'll see how it goes.
All right, Dante, we got to run here, but you just mentioned the Snowball. I'd be curious, what is, if you had one, best memory with the Patriots?
My best memory?
Yeah, the best moment, best win, best whatever. When you look back on your incredible career, what one moment stands out?
I think probably the first Super Bowl championship against the Rams. That was, and honestly, it was only because of the type of players that we had around there and the team that we had, and as signified by, they refused to go out and be introduced as individuals. Instead, they chose the first time in Super Bowl history to be introduced as a team. And I was standing on that sideline that day, and I was wondering if they would do it, and they all came out. The AFC champions have chosen to be introduced as a team, and they all came out, and I said, well, this is what it's all about, and this is why we're here. And those guys were able to see it through. So I'll never, ever, ever forget that, because it was a reminder to an entire generation of viewers, multiple generations of viewers, that it's a team game, and those guys were the epitome of a team.
Awesome. Just got goosebumps, Dante. Thank you so much for your time. As always, we'll talk to you soon, okay?
Okay, stay healthy. Take care.